Oh my gosh, where is it? There's a button here. I can, right? That should. Why are my buttons not working? Like, what? It's this one, and no, like literally none of. Hmm. Let's head over here. How you doing there, friends? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be in your part of the world. Welcome back to another Learn C Sharp with CSharpFritz. I am your host. My name is Jeff Fritz, but you can find me everywhere on the internet. I am CSharpFritz in all the places. It's so good to see you. How's things going this fine Wednesday? It's a rainy start to the day here in Philadelphia where I am. But we're going to get past this. It's supposed to heat up. It's supposed to get a little bit sunnier later today. And we're going to have some fun talking about all the things .NET Aspire today as we start a new series all about .NET Aspire, building building a basic application, getting things developed, deployed, and running out there as either a cloud application or deployed wherever you need it to run. Let's talk about it. Let's build and have some fun with that. Of course, we start off with 40 minutes of AMA here. Ask me anything. Let's talk about all the things going on. There's the chat room, and I'll turn on. We've got a 40-minute timer there. Let me turn that on and say hello. Is it Ashwana do it? Hello, welcome. Hussein is here. Coding with Carlos with a big wave. Nick is waving and giving a greetings on YouTube from Ukraine. Hello, hello. Good to see you, Nick. So, folks, I see there's a bunch of folks watching on YouTube. Taking a look over on Twitch, we see a couple folks getting things started over there. Great to see you. Let me get some music started, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on, what we can do here, and kind of get into the topic of .NET Aspire. How you doing there, Manjunath in India? Hello, welcome, watching on YouTube. Of course, I played the Stream Beats Synthwave playlist. This is music that is DMCA free, royalty free. Listen to it wherever you'd like. Big thanks to Harris Heller and his team of creators for making this music that we're going to listen to in the background today. I have tags up, so as we get into questions, as we want to chat and discuss different things that are going on, we can go into Tags app and we can queue up our questions and get them lined up on the big screen so we can answer everything that's happening on YouTube, on Twitch, all at the same time. How you doing there? Wayne is here from California watching on YouTube. Good to see you, Wayne. Rashad in Afghanistan, greetings. Hello, hello. Nicola is here watching from Slovenia. Hello. Where can you get a cap like this? See, I kind of broke the rules, and I talked to a friend who does embroidery, and for the Visual Studio 2013 launch, my gosh, this hat is 11 years old. For the Visual Studio 2013 launch, they made this hat. My friend made this hat, so I commissioned it. I had somebody else make it. Microsoft doesn't sell this. I'm going to talk more to our marketing folks this week because you're not unique, Bruno, in asking, hey, that's pretty cool. I'd like to get a hat with a Visual Studio or a .NET bot on it. That's kind of cool. How you doing there? Sayeda is here from Hyderabad, watching on YouTube. Great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. Napalm, good morning to you on Twitch. Is it Emre in Dublin? Welcome. Good to see you. I shouldn't wear my Guinness hat today, but a big salute to our friends in Ireland. Hello, hello. We've got a raid on Twitch. Our friends from TBD Gamer streamer joining us. Welcome in. Thank you so much for the raid. I'm still getting started with coffee here. Don't mind me. I'm just facilitating the discussion here. We need a hat store from CSharpFritz. I don't know. You might be onto something. How you doing there, DR Emra with a pix? Yeah. You love Guinness? I used to, and then I was diagnosed with celiac disease, and I can't take the gluten anymore. So it's a forgotten taste on my lips now. So we're going to talk about .NET Aspire today. Now, folks have a lot of questions about it. There was just a Preview 7 release that was issued yesterday. I still have to update the content on aspirify.net, the news website that I've been building and maintaining that has all resources for all things .NET Aspire there. There's about 50 articles, videos, blocks of sample code, tutorials that you can find there. I have to add all the updates that came yesterday and get them on the website. You fell in love with the hat. Thank you, Hussein. I've got a number of hats that I've been making and wearing. So hope there'll be shipping to Ukraine. If I'm going to stand up a store, I'm going to make sure it ships everywhere. So watching from South Africa, is it Filseni? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Hello, Acid Necro. How's it going? It's going quite well. So we're going to talk a bit about .NET Aspire today. I'll do the introduction set of slides. We'll dive in. We'll show the basic templates, how they work, how they interact. We'll even talk a little bit about deploying an application to Azure and show that there are also tools out there for other clouds. How you doing there? Is it Kayo in Brazil? Hello, hello. LA from Oman is watching on YouTube. How's it going there? Innocent Tozeni. Hello. From Zimbabwe. Great to see you. I look like Jurgen Klopp. Oh my goodness. That's a little bit flattering, right? Jurgen isn't right the German footballer. Ooh, and you're now a Liverpool fan. Liverpool. Okay. My neighbor on this side, Irish fella. He loves Leeds United, and I see Leeds got promoted back to the Premiership. They either got promoted or they're in the playoff. I forget. Kaio asks this. Here we go. Now we're talking. Now we're getting some of the questions that I want to know. You want to know the Aspire thing? Absolutely. We will absolutely get into that. Let's start with the first question over here. We're gonna head over. Make sure I set the timer for the remaining. Set a timer for 34 minutes. I need to figure out how to carry this timer over to the other screen, where we're going to be talking and doing a little bit here with your questions on TagsApp. Here we go. TagsApp's running. This is that application that we built over on my live stream that shows and collects messages, and we can highlight them like this. So Kyle on YouTube asks, is Aspire ready for production, or is it still in beta? As of right now, May 8th, 2024, the time that those of you who are watching this live, it's a preview. It's preview 7 that was just released yesterday. The RTM version 1 is going to happen later this month as part of Microsoft Build. That said, Aspire is an add-on to your existing applications. It helps to organize and orchestrate your application so that you can deploy it easily and also have a great debugging experience, as well as set up a bunch of what have evolved into good developer practices, things and tools that you should have around your distributed applications. So I'm going to say that it is still, it's not beta. We call it a preview. So it's not technically supported yet. However, it's an add-on to your application. It's not going to break anything to add it in there, and you're going to see a little bit of an enhancement happening just before the release at the end of this month. But you can certainly use it. You're welcome to use it. And there is an upgrade path that's very clearly defined through each preview. I've been upgrading through previews and haven't seen any significant I need to rewrite types of problems. I've seen some issues where I've needed to redeploy things to, in my case, I use Azure for my production cloud. So you need to be aware that there may be maybe some adjustments in the deployment tools. They're not significant. Excuse me. All right, let's catch up and see what else is going on here. Why is Thindol? That's from a while ago. Let's go back over here. You're here to know about Aspire. Yes. Let's see. Stephen Daniel. Hope you're doing well today. Really enjoy using .NET Aspire, but love to learn more about it. So we're doing just the introduction stuff today. Louise, hello to you in Brazil. Louise, how's it going there? It's not against Swagger. It's not against Swagger. So, Emra here with a question. So, does Aspire compete with Aspire? No. And I don't want to dig too far into this, but I'm happy to discuss now. Aspire is just a layer that helps orchestrate and enable your application. So you can still run Swagger inside your application, and it will allow you to manage, deploy, do service discovery between your Swagger application and your client applications that are connecting into it. It'll get that service discovery capability so that you don't have to copy around inside of your application. What's the domain name and port that my Swagger application is on? Let me go copy that into all the configuration files, or put it into some common location like a key vault, so that location can be extracted and deployed to your entire application. So, two different things. Remind me about this when we get into the demo, and I will absolutely demonstrate this. Right? These are the types. These questions help to shape the demo and the discussion that we're going to have on the second half of of our session today. I want questions like this. Hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? So that we can absolutely discuss and go through and make sure that you know enough that you can speak eloquently to your coworkers, to the folks you're working on projects with you, the boss. You can talk to the boss and make sure they know what's going on. So we're absolutely want to hear those types of questions. Napalm says, assume at GAs it will be general availability in 2 weeks as part of Microsoft Build. Yes, indeed. Yep. Acid Necro with a question here. This is a common misconception that I want to make sure we catch. And just like the Swagger question, let's talk about this. Is Aspire just for Blazor, or can I use it with MVC web apps? So Aspire is just a layer on top of your, not even on top of, but just beneath your application, supporting it. Think of it like the scaffolding that holds up your application in development. You can use any front-end framework, not just ASP.NET. You can use Node. I don't have a Node application here that I can demo with it. You can use Python. You can use Go. You can use Rust. You can use any application as part of .NET Aspire. You don't even have to build a web application. You just want to build and have a bunch of stuff that's processing orders, processing information, mailing list, I don't know. And you want to deploy just a bunch of headless services that are working on database stuff, you can do that too. So not just for, remind me when we get into the demos and I'll add an MVC application into the demo. Let me catch up. Hey, how's it going there, Chris Jones? Does Aspire only work with .NET applications? Asks Stephen Daniel. Right, so I just commented on this one, so we got you covered there. How's it going? I mentioned Chris Jones. DevFlow here says, I use Swagger to get the JSON and imported it into something else like Postman. Oh, it moved. I thought we were on pause. Pause. Where did it go? I use Swagger to get the JSON imported to something else like Postman or Swagger code client generation website. You can totally do that. Yep. Is Aspire compatible with .NET 7? It's .NET 8 and forward is where it runs. However, the client libraries, you can, I believe you can reference and use in earlier versions of .NET. Remind me about that. We'll go back and talk about it. .NET 7 isn't an LTS. It isn't a long-term support. You are correct. Stallone questioning, the Aspire starter template is the Blazor web app, server app or WebAssembly? It's a server app. You could certainly do WebAssembly with it. Not that much of a difference. Let me grab just a couple more here. Yes, you can use any stuff with it. Yep. You can. Now, the question really is, right, how much is orchestrated and available? So where Napalm is pointing out is some of the client libraries that light up extra features inside your .NET application might be .NET 8 and forward only. We'll go take a look at that. I'm not sure the answer to that question. Because, quite frankly, .NET 7 support ends this month. Like, .NET 7 support ends, like, might be next week. Might be this week. Might be today. Support. So here are .NET support. View the .NET support policy. .NET 7, end of support, May 14. So if you are on .NET 7, support ends next week. So, and Aspire comes out later this month. So I would look for support for .NET 6 at the most. But .NET 7, sorry, you're going to be out of support in a very short amount of time here. So, Walter with a question here. If the application is currently deployed as an Azure web app using Azure SQL, can .NET Aspire be used, or does it have to be deployed in containers? Right now, .NET Aspire deploys Azure container apps. That's That's V1. And even then, it's not .NET Aspire that's doing that. It's the AZD deployment script. It's set up and designed to deploy containers from your configuration to Azure Container Apps. This is absolutely a request on the list to work with App Service. So it would redeploy it as a container app, but that's a request that's coming soon. So it's an evolving. We're in preview at this point, and there are 2 development teams, 3 or 4 actually. There's a core team that's building Aspire. There's a team that's building the AZD tool that builds the cloud integration and cloud deployment to Microsoft Azure from Aspire. There's a tooling team that's building the tooling that goes in Visual Studio, and another tooling team that's working on the tooling that goes into VS Code. Lots of great stuff coming and being built. So Emra says, is it kind of a mono repo for all applications? No. It's not. There are ways to work outside of a mono repo architecture for those who aren't familiar with the mono repo terminology. That's having a single source code repository that has all the code for your application. You might have configuration where you have one application in a repository A, and you might have other applications that work together in that same system in repository B. You can absolutely reach across those to orchestrate your Aspire application. That can be done. Catching up here. Restart. Let's see. Pause. But catching up. Good stuff here. Yeah, app host is all 8, and you can probably pull 7 in. Yep, I agree, Napalm. That was right. That's kind of the escape hatch. You can always do that kind of stuff. Yep, .NET 7 support ends this month. Yes. Something with tags. The play pause button is a little bit more aggressive at pausing. So, upgraded from .NET 6 to 8 with Temptix TwitchBot, no problems. Yeah. How you doing there, Ratana in Cambodia? Hello. Headed back over here. Let's bring up those next messages. What's the aim with the other cloud providers besides Azure? From our friend Peter Ritchie. How you doing there, Peter? Good to see you. We want to level up the cloud native experience across the board. So we'll talk about this when we get into the slides. .NET Aspire stops at the end of the development experience. At the end of where you write code, it generates a manifest. When you say, I want to publish this application, it generates a manifest. At that point, other tools can pick up that manifest and decide how to deploy this application system that you've designed. Out of the box, we're going to support Azure, but because Aspire is completely open source, other folks have built tools to allow you to deploy to Kubernetes, deploy to AWS, are the 2 big ones that are out there. So this is important to us to make it easier for folks to be able to build and deploy distributed applications with a bit of .NET. So it also means that .NET tools can start to become part of a central stack that helps folks. Because when you orchestrate and deploy with JSON files and YAML files and these markup files that don't have any knowledge of where they are, where they're going, and can't make decisions unless you write script or interpreters that know how to make those decisions, it's very frustrating. So in designing this, as we'll see, you get to write full C# code to make decisions, inspect things, and decide what to do. So pretty compelling like that. And we think it's a good way to kind of level everybody up here. Thank you for the compliment on the Visual Studio hat. Yeah. Marcus here. I have a question about using maximum receive message size in Blazor server. They say you can risk DDoS a task, but is there a magic number to watch out for? I don't know, but when you start accepting larger messages, yeah, you can knock over a server if you accept too much data. I don't have a recommended max size off the top of my head. I have to look at the docs. So, let's see here. Let's catch up. Yeah, right. I've been the pause feature. I've been using a bit more here in Napalm. You're using Entity Framework, so probably swapping that version. No, actually, it won't give you any headache. No, it'll give you new features, and it'll run significantly faster. So, your Vice over here. I'll just let this one keep playing. With a question here. Before we go with a cloud deployment, can you do something about local dev experience? Cosmos DB image emulator is a dumpster fire. The GitHub repo is a ghost town. Azure Service Bus still has a way to run locally. These are questions for the folks on those teams. We build the developer tools to help folks build and develop with .NET, with Visual Studio Code. The development experience for these, I hear you. There's also something to be discussed about getting support for ARM processors for some of those emulators. I can't speak for them. I do not represent them. I can relay your frustration and try to get them to respond, but I cannot speak and put words in their mouth. That would be irresponsible for me to do. But I absolutely hear your frustration because, quite frankly, both of these tools, Cosmos DB and Azure Service Bus, are great tools. But it'd be really nice to have a local development experience to test and work with before we go to the cloud. I absolutely hear you, and I 100% agree with you. I will relay your frustration. That's the best I can do. A lot of people hear your frustration. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. Those teams have a priority, and it's up to them to answer and reply. As a spokesperson, as a advocate, as a community manager for developer division, that frustrates me too. That's a little irresponsible and not the way that we like to run things. So I will absolutely relay your frustration and see what we can do to at least get them to comment about anything around these topics. Just something. Give it so. Let's see. Azure Service Bus has an emulator coming out, you believe? It'll be announced at Build. Do some Googling. Yeah. Cosmos DB doesn't run on it. Well, the Mac Silicon is ARM. There's a lot of Azure things that don't run on ARM. That's about all I can say. So they don't. There was a question back there. Somebody was asking, what happens if I reject a message? Oh, there's what it looks like right there. That's auto moderation. That's rejecting. Actually, no, that's a blocked user. Turns it red and blurs it so that we don't have to read it. Azure Service Bus Emulator's most requested issue on GitHub. Great. I can't make them build it. All I can do is pressure them to make a comment about it. Make a public comment, make a statement that, hey, there's folks that are interested in something here, and you're blowing them off going on 6 years. So I need a way. I think, no, I can't see. I can't click that. I purposely turned off the ability to select and click a link there. I can open that. Nope, can't. Here's the issue from 2018. The .NET SDK too. Azure SDK for Go, Azure SDK for .NET. Currently doing active development on this feature as of 2 weeks ago. Expect to have more to share around an initial release by end of year. Local emulator for event hubs will go into public preview in the first half of this year. So, they're working on it. That's about all that I can say based on what's in there. I have a little bit of leftover Bluebeard. So, hang on. I require our chatters here to be polite to each other. Like, not cool. Will there be a blog post or learn page about how to correctly use Aspire with... these types of things are being built. And they're coming. Hang on. Let me catch up. Here, Marcus. When will my from scratch Blazor playlist start? We just did that for the last 2-3 months. It's in this playlist on the .NET channel. Check out C# with CSharpFritz. Scroll to the bottom and you'll see the Blazor. You'll see the Blazor episodes there. So blog posts, less blog posts, but we're building documentation about how to hook these up. Quite frankly, hooking up to identity isn't too much of a change. It's the exact same thing. Yeah. Kaio here asks, can I use Aspire to deploy to a local Windows server? So so if the Windows server is running Kubernetes, you can. It's not designed to deploy to IIS. And those because right, and those types of configurations and how you deploy to here, another team can build this, can build a tool to help with this. The question that you're going to need to, that folks need to answer is, well, what happens when I bring in Postgres or SQL Server or Service Bus? Those things don't exist in this ecosystem, so we need to throw errors or spin up a container environment, stuff like that. It's possible to handle that. However, nobody's built it yet. The focus from the Microsoft team is get you into Azure. Deploying locally, secondary concern. Emra asks, can I specify as simple as possible why I need Aspire for my project? Yes, I'll get to this when I get to the slides. Quite simply, it makes your development environment repeatable everywhere when you have distributed concerns. We'll see that as we talk about the slides and get into the demos. Let's see a couple more messages here. The new series I talked about on my latest Blazor video. Doing Blazor from scratch. Don't remember this. I'm sorry. Not the pizza one. No, we're doing Aspire from scratch here today. Yes, Preview 7. No, it's not a blog post. It's an entry on Microsoft Learn. Here, I can go in this way. So the article isn't posted on Aspirify yet, but you can go to the Preview 6 entry. And here's the Preview 7 mention. I'll post that link. Talking about breaking changes, what changed. There was some renaming of some properties, some classes. 2 classes were renamed. Some method signature changes around Cosmos DB. Some updates to the dashboard, some images that were updated. So, and also the ability to override and specify appropriate tags you want to use with an image, with a container image. We'll talk more about this. There are also directions here about how to update your application, your system, if you've been keeping up with .NET Aspire. So you have the link on that. This is aspirify.net, website that I've been building and maintaining. I've got about 5 or 6 articles that I need to add to this website. I'll do that later today. So, yeah, and Marcus, I appreciate trying to keep me honest. I don't remember. I'm sorry, and yeah, I'm not sure. So let's grab a couple of these. Yep. Stallone on YouTube asks, for an e-commerce project, do I recommend MVC or Blazor? I would recommend Blazor at this point. The component model, the performance is very rich. It can run very fast. That Aspirify.net website is Blazor. MVC works great too. Blazor, I think, just is a more modern way to build and write web applications at this point. That said, I would do most of it with server-side rendering for your e-commerce site. There are a couple places where I might drop in some WebAssembly components, but they would be the exception and not the rule of what to do. Acid Necro on Twitch asks, so Aspire is a thing I download, or is it a new project type to add to my solution? Yes and yes. Aspire is more of an orchestrator. You're going to create a project that does the orchestration of the other projects in your solution. You'll see this when we get to the demos. So you're not wrong. Mario with a comment here. Aspire is so awesome, works well with dedicated instances of Unreal Engine servers. Whoa, Mario! Hello. Okay, hang on. Stop everything here. Hang on. Mario just got in and is showing some really cool stuff here. Let's put the brakes on. Running Aspire to manage Unreal Engine servers. So folks earlier that were saying, hey, can I run this with things besides Blazor? Here's Mario running with Unreal Engine. That's phenomenal. I'd love to hear more about your experience with this. This feels like something that more folks need to hear and learn about, because that's thinking outside the box. That's getting creative. Kudos to you, Mario. That's awesome. Oh, love that. Yeah. Let's see what else we have coming in here. There we go. Michael asks, any chance ASP will get a first-party solution to support WebAuthn passkeys? Doesn't look like your message made it through. Okay. I thought this was available in the new identity stuff. I'm going to assume you're right. I know that they're doing more work on identity and security capabilities in ASP for .NET 9. I would refer you to the .NET Community Stand-Up for planning of new features. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to this. Good request. They do try to keep up with all the modern features and capabilities on the web. So if that is missing, I would believe it's on the to-do list. Send me a screen on Twitter about Aspire dashboard last week. You did? Do me a favor. Can you send that again? Just, I absolutely. I want to share that here because that's a phenomenal story. Let me see here. Is it Matthias? Is it possible to use the Scala language in conjunction with .NET? Not directly, but I mean, you can certainly stand up services and web services, other Windows services, service daemons on Mac and Linux and Unix that will respond on ports and standard protocols. You could certainly do that to collaborate, but you can't, I don't think you can, from Scala, call directly into .NET code and wait for a response. I don't think you could, I haven't seen anybody do that, but you can absolutely interact with isolated services, or the other way around, have .NET applications call into Scala-based services. Michael says, don't think it is. Look for it. The new identity stuff is great, but you're looking to avoid passwords and be ready for the future. So you can do OIDC, but that you're still passing tokens around. So, let me see here. Good. That's a message on Blue Sky. We don't want to see Blue Sky messages. Turn those off. We also don't want to see Mastodon. Turn those off. Tweet is up with the screen mentioning me. Ah, there we go. Oh, awesome, Mario. Yes. Let me grab that. Bring it over. So here. So look at this. Look at this. We're going to learn that .NET Aspire gives us a dashboard so that we can orchestrate and see all of our application components, application system components, not just, right, the website that you're running, but the application system. So we can see here, right, Mario has a couple of MySQL databases running, right? Yep, that's the end of my 40-minute timer. So ItemsDB, PlayerDB, QuestDB, SkillsDB, 4 MySQL databases. Cool. An Unreal server running here. Now that's an executable. So you can run EXEs that are built with other tools and languages, host them, and interact with them. And then we have a couple projects down here that Mario's running to orchestrate and connect to, and he's able to orchestrate and see exactly the output of that Unreal server. This is phenomenal. This is really cool. To be able to do that and reach outside the box. I want to make sure that some of our folks see this. Darn it. There we go. Right, where is he? Where's Pine? There he is. Oh, he's Pine 7 here. Okay, there we go. This is an Aspire configuration that is connecting to and working with Unreal Engine servers. Phenomenal. That is really cool. Thank you for sharing. That is awesome stuff. It's hosting a game server then and a bunch of ancillary services. That's what it looked like. Yeah. Really, really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's move on. We're done with our little bit of AMA here at the start. Thank you so much for all the questions as we go through and talk about and work through a little bit of some of your needs, questions, and what you want to do. And we'll absolutely shape our discussion today around working with those tools and get into some of the demos, some of the things that you're interested in learning about. So I'm going to start off here talking about .NET Aspire. I'm going to go through and do the introduction talk that was delivered as part of .NET Conf back in November. There'll be more announcements, descriptions, and further dive in. You'll see a number of talks about .NET Aspire at Microsoft Build. You're welcome to, of course, check those out. There's going to be lots of great stuff happening at Microsoft Build around Aspire because it's its go live day. It's its coming out party. It's going to be great. So more to come. So that's exactly what we're going to answer here, Umar. I'm going to go over to my slides and we're going to talk about this right now. Let's do it. Let's answer your question. What exactly is this .NET Aspire thing? Let's go. Here it is. Here's the slides. Look at that. It's like I'm presenting slides to somebody. So this was the preview of a .NET framework that we had and we shared during .NET Conf. And let's face it, folks have problems building what are considered cloud native applications. Because you have these four pillars around your application system that you want to be able to manage and know about and work with. You want to be able to observe your application with metrics that are being calculated about how your servers are running, how your microservices are performing. Are they behind schedule? What's going on with those? You want great logging support so that you can not only see logs from the various services, but you'd also like to have maybe some object serialization, some distributed tracing. Now, there's folks that run services out there that do that, but which one do you choose? How do you put it in the box? Can be a little bit tricky to work with. You want to be able to redact content sometime. You want to be able to test with fakes for logging and metrics so that when you're working locally, you don't need to have a big service like Azure App Insights or a Datadog or a SolarWinds out there so that you can see all the statistics and logging as you're testing. Right? As a developer, I don't want to have to go and deploy. And like our friends were saying there about Azure Service Bus and Cosmos DB, you want to be able to run in a small local environment so that you can be nimble and respond and test. And if you break something on your machine, no big deal. You can wipe it and start over. And I totally appreciate and hear those requests. You want to add resiliency to your applications when you get it running out on the cloud. So there's a new Poly library that we should start using to make our connections between various microservices and databases and other Azure services or cloud services. We want to make them really resilient so that they connect and work great. We want to have a stateful reconnect when we use SignalR. And we want to be able to scale nicely, right? What's using the cloud unless you can scale, do ahead of time compilation so you can increase the density, have lots more instances of your application that are using less memory, less processor? That's a good thing. Everybody wants performance. This is kind of like a no-brainer. Everybody always wants performance, right? Like, if you're deploying a new version of a framework, and you know what? I got some great news for you. It runs 5 times slower. That's garbage. No, nobody wants that. You want better performance, and you want to be able to get enhanced performance when you start using more tools. Absolutely. Chiseled Ubuntu. Get rid of all the other things that you don't need in your Linux distribution. Be able to slim that down to as small as possible. Manageability. You want to be able to do certificate auto rotation. Hey, that SSL certificate, we want to rotate that every couple months. Yeah. We got support for that. We're going to put into Kestrel for that. So. All right. So we heard these comments, these questions from folks, from customers. Hey, it's not that not just that I have too many Lego bricks to choose from. I'm not sure I'm even putting them together correctly. Nothing works together by default. This one really frustrates me because I absolutely have run into that situation working, building, writing code. Every developer on my team now needs to be an expert in networking, containers, telemetry systems. It never used to be that way, and it slows down everything we do. Yeah, I don't want to have to be an expert in all this nonsense. Let me just build my application. Let me focus on building my website, building my stateful application service, these things. So these are the problems that we need to solve in order to make things cloud native. Reduce the complexity. Make it easier to get started. There's too many choices. Give us an opinionated set of choices that get us started in the right way and help us be successful immediately. A paved path of proven, performant, and effective deployment and construction strategies. So this is what .NET Aspire is. It's a cloud-ready stack, not a framework, stack for building observable, production-ready, distributed applications. Personally, I'm okay with even taking the word distributed off there and just say production-ready applications. Because I think you can benefit from using this with just a simple website. Just let me do my stuff. Agreed, Acid Necro. Get all that other cruft out of the way and get down to just the minimum here. That's off topic. I'm out of the AMA segment right now. I'll answer that question offline. I'm not gonna interrupt the lesson to the AMA was 10-15 minutes ago. So .NET Aspire comes with a series of components, and a couple of components that we're launching with include Redis caching, RabbitMQ, SQL Server, Postgres, and a bunch of other Azure capabilities. Now there's a whole lot more that have been added into the mix since this slide and since we made that announcement. And we know how to deliver components. We deliver it with NuGet. So we're going to package them together and make them available as NuGet packages that know how to interact with these services. So, we're going to give you a developer dashboard, and you saw a screenshot of that dashboard from Mario there a little bit. Gives you structured logs. This is an old instance of the dashboard here. Metrics that update live on screen. Distributed traces so you can see exactly how requests were processed and handled, and allows you to see all your dependencies. That's pretty cool. Like, there are folks that want to go to .NET Aspire just so they can get this thing. We'll show you that in a minute when we get started here. The benefits of using Aspire, and to make it easier to get you started, you don't have to. You may have seen other streams where I had to start a couple different applications and have a container running in the background with a database running and stuff. Single command operation. You start one service, you run one command, and it will spin up the entire solution, not just your application, but all of your dependencies. You get to express the application, the system topology, the architecture using C#, not YAML, not JSON. So you get to use commands that you're already familiar with, and you get assistance from tools like Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio 2022, that will help you with code completion, tooltips that show you descriptions of what's going on. And you get to use the full scope of the programming language to build and express your system's topology, the architecture. You don't have to figure out and write in some arcane, space-delimited Unicode markup language that some other processor somewhere else is going to run, and when it fails, it's going to just dump a trace of errors on you, and you're not going to know what's going on. You get all the expressiveness of C#, the .NET compiler, analyzers helping out along the way. Really, really handy stuff. And you get to be able to use this to deploy to the cloud. And you can also deploy to Kubernetes and multiple clouds as well. I'm going to pick up on a couple questions here. Is it possible to run Aspire on a separate machine so it will not make my computer even slower? Aspire is a developer tool. It's not going to make your machine slower. It's running all the tools that you needed to run and debug locally. So there isn't a story around deploying and running on a different system and attaching a debugger. That's not a thing yet. The intention is you're using this to orchestrate and optimize your development experience. The deployment is another story. Marcus says, I wonder, since I have a concrete project that would need some kind of video service. Feels like the dashboard, Michael says, feels like the dashboard has stolen the show a bit. It has, but we're going to show you a little bit more around there. Carl says, is this like Docker Compose but with C#? A bit is what you're going to see from this. However, it's not limited to just containers. That's massive. You saw Mario shared an image. He's not just running some MySQL containers. He's also got some projects that it's attaching to. Projects aren't running in containers. And an Unreal Engine executable that he's got started up and running and orchestrated with the cluster. That's massive. No YAML, that's right. Folks don't like YAML in chat. I kind of agree with you. This is why you prefer Azure DevOps to GitHub Actions, better UI. I do prefer the UI in Azure DevOps, Marcus. Totally agree. Totally agree with you on that. Matthews asks, is it more effective to manage each microservice as a separate .NET Aspire solution or grouping multiple microservices under a single .NET Aspire solution, or am I missing something? It's easier to group them as a single .NET Aspire system. I'm not going to use the term solution, but system, so that you can orchestrate and do your traces between those microservices as one debugging development experience is my belief. I haven't had that experience yet though, so I can't first person attest to that. But you're going to see through this video series, we're going to add microservices and build out a very simple application to be an over-engineered, massive, big, dumb blog. More on that in a minute when we get done the slides. You can't use remote dev features of VS Code where you plug into a development VM. That's different. Aspire should be able to run in a dev container. Should it? I don't know. I haven't tried that. That's interesting. I haven't thought that. Does Aspire encourage... Don Steffen asks, does Aspire encourage the use of mono repos? It makes it easier when you have a mono repo. That said, though, you are not limited to mono repos. And I'll show you how you can kind of break out of that. Since AMS isn't part of Azure. AMS. I'm sorry. I'm context switching quickly here, Marcus. Help me out with the AMS acronym. Do I think Microsoft Orleans is still applicable? Yes. David Fowler is here on YouTube. Oh my gosh, my friend. Hello, welcome. That's David Fowler. He's one of the architects working on .NET Aspire, and I'm doing the intro talk here before we get in. And next time, we're going to start talking about the big dumb blog demo that I'm building and showcasing for you here. Good to see you. It does work in a dev container. Okay, I hadn't tried it, and right, I think a common thing that folks appreciate when I give these sessions is I don't affirm that something works unless I've read it in documentation or I've experienced it myself. And I haven't tried it in a container. I'm gonna have to try that. If you have more repositories than developers, you might have a problem. This is true. Hang on, that feels like something that should be in like Bill Engvall tone. If you've got more, Jeff Foxworthy, right? If you've got more repositories than developers, you might have a problem. Yeah. Our friend David was also on the AWS stream on Twitch. Was it Monday? Talking about how you can use .NET Aspire with AWS. So, great stuff there as well. Hello to you in, is it Anuradha in Sri Lanka? Hello. So, I'm going over and discussing what Aspire is. Lots of questions around what it is and how folks can work with it. The first preview was available way back in November. Preview 7 was just released yesterday. Preview 6 is the version I've been building with. It's completely open source. Okay, this is on GitHub. You can head out to your favorite GitHub. GitHub is everybody's favorite, isn't it? Right? GitHub.com/.net Aspire, and there are no limitations. Anybody can see and work with all the source code for .NET Aspire. And you can see they've been working on and making changes 17 hours ago in the documentation. 2 weeks ago, changes. Yesterday. Used by 742 people, more than 100 contributors working on the project, okay? This is not vendor lock by Microsoft. There is no vendor lock here. .NET is open source. C# is open source. You can download and use these tools anywhere. I've been working on the Aspirify.net website on my Mac, on my Linux laptop, on this machine, my Windows desktop. I commit my code into source control and I can pull it down, and I have the exact same development experience with my database, with my website, and my microservice that I built to go with it, available on all 3 systems, no questions asked. For teams that have different developers that specialize in different things, this is huge for you to be able to work together, isolate the development of those various projects and things, and be able to bring things back together and collaborate. Let me catch up on chat a little bit here. Hello. Azure Media Services. Off topic. Sorry. That is not part of... AMA was 20 minutes ago. I'm sorry. I'm not going to answer questions about stuff. Needed the voiceover in the southern accent. If you have a function that isn't available on Azure, how do you split the services up to different providers? Asks Marcus. Okay, so if you're working with a service that isn't available on a certain location, that's for the deployment tools to decide and work with. Let me show you by starting up a default project here in Aspire, and I want to show you where Aspire starts and stops. Okay, because there's a little bit of confusion around where Aspire ends that I want to make sure that you're aware of and you can catch up to. And my project templates are taking a second here. .NET Aspire helps if you spell it right. Where'd my templates go? Did I get... I upgraded to Project 7, to Preview 7. Am I caught behind a preview something here? Yeah, there was a preview update. Fine. Look at this. This is how much I trust the preview update. I'm going to let it update for us live here. That's fine. And it should run pretty quickly, even though I'm broadcasting. Ooh! Yes. I know. Nope. Go ahead. You can do it. Be my guest. Because I just shut down Visual Studio. So that'll patch real quick. I thought I had the latest update, because I updated the other day. The awesome part of Aspire for me, let me tell you what, I'll leave this hanging out here. And I'll go back to Tags app so we can take some of your questions. Live updates? No, not scary. Hey, bald bearded builder, we're gonna do it live. Absolutely. Pause. You love .NET Computer Whiz? I do too. You really want to talk about this tool with your Java developer friends? Me too. I want to talk to our Python friends about it as well. Just need a nice project for it? I got you. Somebody suggested talking about starter projects. I'm working on that. Thanks for the response. Currently, we have quite a few microservices, all separate repos. Looking at Aspire to see how it can help us. Oh, yeah. It only works with the preview. No, I do have the preview version turned on. Yeah, look, you're on Tags app. Right? Look. You're on Tags app. There it is. Right there. While I update, where can I get the project template for Aspire? Asks Acid Necro. It's a .NET workload, so I have to update the... I'm going to sneeze. I really am. Here's the preview 7 docs. Run .NET workload update. Everybody can run this at the command line if you have .NET installed. And then .NET workload install Aspire. Done. 2 commands. Run it at the command line. If you don't have .NET installed, there are brew commands. I don't think they want you to use brew. There are apt install commands that you can get that will install, and you can run winget and install .NET at the command line. If you're a Windows developer and you don't have .NET installed, what? Really? Okay. Enough of my rant. 89% on the Visual Studio update. Whatever. Adding that to your LinkedIn. Yeah, go ahead and do that. Write down here, please. Write down where. Write down where, Roman. Help me out here. The context switching is strong. And the ADHD is buzzing here, let me tell you. So there's a Stream Elements question that'll get blocked and turned red. There it goes. Yeah. Not all heroes wear capes. Well, thank you. Thank you. Come on now. It's installing in redistributable for Visual C++. Come on now. Get this running. I don't think there were any more slides to go to. Yeah, get .NET 8. That's, yep. Keyboard shortcut for LinkedIn. No, don't do that. Don't do that. The line to download. Oh, yeah. Write it down. Sure, I'll copy that down for you. That's fine. 2 commands, real easy. There you go. .NET workload update. .NET workload install Aspire. So this is the Preview 7 release notes you can find on Microsoft Learn. And Visual Studio is hanging on its install. That feels bad. Otherwise, we will work in VS Code. And I can do that. I have the power to run this in VS Code. We can do that. But looks like Visual Studio is eat broke. Eat broke. What can I tell you? Do I have the hat to run this in VS Code? I don't have a VS Code hat. I'm going to have to talk to my embroiderer and get a VS Code hat. Installing it now on your Mac? Welcome in, Don Stefan. Welcome. Go ahead and install. Next week when we come back, we'll be coding live, and we're gonna start with a simple blog that has content written and saved as markdown files, and we're gonna start with the simplest introduction. We're gonna add Aspire, and we're gonna add a database, and then we're gonna slowly introduce other architecture concepts in other episodes and add microservices and service bus and additional features, and we'll do more logging and metrics and telemetry. It's coming. There are lots of cool features, and you can't cover it all in once. So what we're going to do in this series is we're going to isolate and cover some of those features in the scope of going from a simple application, the simplest of applications that doesn't have business logic. It's got one object, an article in a blog. And we're going to slowly make that something bigger and crazier that I hope makes sense to folks.
And then?
Is that what you were looking for? How do you create an Android project with .NET? Try .NET MAUI. Yep, I see the comment there. Cold Fusion. I guess you could use Cold Fusion with it. I guess. Yeah, I'm kind of frozen here on the Visual C++ updates. So, yep, you were trying to get the .NET, and then I appreciate that. So, it's giving you an error while installing Aspire? Yeah, I agree with David. What error? GA is going to be in 2 weeks. General availability in 2 weeks. And that's a good thing, right? Even then, it's version 1. When you think about the scope of the things that are going to be covered by cloud native development, they're not biting off the entire world here. They're staying focused so they can deliver a high quality experience for that limited range. Let's make sure we've got a high quality experience for building with .NET first. Some of these other things and integrations and services to deploy and local tools and improving debugging experience and making some of the things a little bit more interesting and compelling, it's all open source. We can build and set direction together for where we go with the next versions of things. But I have a sneaky suspicion our friend Mr. Fowler there has a couple ideas in his mind that he's going to get the team working on over the summer here. Are the APIs hardened now? Should I expect breaking changes on GA if I use Preview 7? Asks Michael. They're pretty close to hardened, I would say. Like, There have been minimal naming changes that have happened in the last 2 previews. Minimal. And they're not massive, oh my gosh, the API, I need to move things to different places. They slightly changed the nomenclature, right? Like, if we look at, there was, right, the do I enable health checks property is now called disable health checks, right? It's just a slight renaming. And I believe, is the upgrade assistant updated to help with this? I don't see it. But these types of changes are minimal, and it's easy to do a find and replace on them. I mean, you're in a preview. I don't expect massive changes. P7 was the bulk of the breaking changes. Yeah, you shouldn't see that. So because it's a preview, the framework is a preview, it's not shipped in the RTM version of Visual Studio. So if you want to use Visual Studio with Aspire, for now, you have to use the preview track of Visual Studio to get it. That makes sense. We're not going to deploy early release preview versions of tools with the RTM hardened version of Visual Studio. Seem to have a regression with Aspire Preview 7. Looks like using C# SignalR client has a problem when spinning up that. Maybe the service isn't available yet when it tries to connect. I would need to follow up with you to see more about that. If you can generate a repro and post an issue in the Aspire GitHub repository there, open an issue over here, is where I would suggest, with details, a minimal reproduction of what you're trying to do so the team can take a look at it, is what I would suggest. So give them a link to a repository on your GitHub that they can take a look at and poke around, but make it as minimal as possible. Like, start with the template, add the SignalR client, and show that it doesn't work. Okay, finally Visual Studio finished. I thought I had it updated. My apologies there. I do try and get everything updated and running with the latest and greatest before stream. And evidently I missed one. All right, let's do this. Let's get in and talk about the initial template and build our first project. So create a new project. There we go. I'm going to choose the .NET Aspire Starter application. These other things out here, these other 4 are various projects that live within an Aspire system. Let me show you the starter application first, and you'll see where those other things come along. I'm going to put it in cdev, and we're going to call it the ever wonderful Aspire App 5. Yes, go ahead, create it. And I want to allocate Redis for caching. This is a .NET application that we're creating. We're in our standard .NET toolset that we should probably feel pretty comfortable with. And it's offering to add Redis to the application for us. Okay, that's interesting. Let me make sure I have Zoom it running here. So the solution that it gives us is not too far off from things that you might be used to seeing in your existing applications. Let's talk about it. We have an API service that has a minimal API sitting here inside Program CS. This app host thing, right? This right here. This is our entry point for .NET Aspire. We'll look at that in a minute. Service defaults. These are the various consistent configuration things that we want available across our application system. And we have our website. Inside the template, it's a Blazor application. And we had somebody ask, can I do MVC with this? You betcha. We'll light up and do MVC with this in just a little bit. So let's run this so I can show you what it looks like. Our app host has the program CS in here. This is what defines the application system. And when I run this, it has a Redis cache. You see it there on line 3. It says add the API service here. Let me put a carriage return there so you can see it. Add the API service, and there's a string here, API service. And it's also going to add that website, that Blazor application, and a name here, web front end, and some other things. I don't know what those are yet. But let's start the application. This is our single entry point. I don't have to start multiple projects or go out and run the Redis cache container over here in Docker on the side, right? If you've watched my other streams, you've seen that I've had a scripts folder where I've got a bunch of scripts in there. Run database, run service, right? Run my function service, run my website. And when I want to debug, I have to run all of those things in the right order. First problem Aspire solves. I can just launch the app host project here, and it will give me all of those things running at once. Let's get into this. Hey Zig, how you doing there? You like the hat? Thank you. This is from 2013, from the Visual Studio 2013 launch. I might need to get an Aspire hat made. Same black with the purple brim, but check it out. So, folks were saying, "Hey, that dashboard is kind of stolen a little bit of the attention here." Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I'm gonna change this to dark mode because I'm a dark mode kind of person. So yes, it supports light, dark mode, and you can even have it obey whatever your system is configured with. Source code, you can jump off to GitHub right here and get into Aspire. Okay. Help button, fine. We saw inside of that program CS, there were 3 services, our Redis cache, our API service project, and our web project. And here they are in the dashboard. Check it out. Redis cache. And we can even see which container it brought in to run Redis and where it's listening. Here's that API service project that was in the template that was generated for us. And here's the web service. Now, I've also got this list of endpoints. Right, and I'm zoomed in a bit here. Of course, if I zoom out, right, it becomes a little bit easier to see all these columns. Right, but I'm zooming in because I know some of you are watching on your phones. You're watching on tablets, you're watching on smaller screens. Some of you are watching on the really big monitor in the kitchen. I get it. That's cool. So the endpoints here shows you, here's where on your local system it's running. So I can see this API service by just clicking into it, and there's my API service running out there. Returning faux weather data. It's fake weather data, who cares? So that's kind of cool. It's just hanging out there answering on that API endpoint, right? That HTTP endpoint. Let me catch up on a couple questions here because there's folks that are helping out. And Acid Necro asks if Redis cache is a must for Aspire to work. No, it's included in the template as a demonstration for other features that you can add in to your application. Okay. Fake weather data is basically what gets reported anyways. Michael, I see what you did there. But the Redis cache is out here, and I can see the log of it starting up. That's kind of cool. Okay. But let's launch my website out here. And there it is. It's a Blazor website. And of course, it connects to that weather API and returns data. Now, inside my application, it's actually set up that weather page with in the default here. Why am I hanging? It set it up with some output caching. So if I refresh this, right, I'm doing Control F5, I'm getting the exact same data because it's coming out of output cache. And there you see it flipped, and I've got new data. So I'm using Redis for output caching inside the application. And Visual Studio seems to have taken a powder here on me. Let's restart you. This is how you can tell it's live, because stuff breaks and we're going to fix it and move on. No questions asked. Oh no. Something's taking on my CPU. There we go. And it's not Visual Studio. That's hanging for some reason. Do I still have Storage Explorer running? You go away. All right, jump back in. So, how is Redis hooked up? How is that app service hooked up? And let's talk about how we get a little bit of discovery happen between these things just to do the connection, because we saw there are 3 resources. Here they are in the program CS, our cache, our API, and the web front end. How are they connected? I got you. There is a command available, add Redis, right? We set up our distributed application, and we're going to start adding configuration with commands like add Redis. And we're going to name our Redis service, and why not name our cache service something as simple as cache? Makes sense. Easy for us to define and find. And I'm going to reference and say, hey, start up the API service by adding a project and point inside the projects in my solution and start the API service. And we're going to name it API service. Let's finally add the web project. And you can see these all in Solution Explorer right over here. So, right, there's API service. It's right there. Web, right? Let me put the tabs on the top so we can see everything here. So there's Aspire App 5 Web, Aspire App 5 Web. We're going to name it Web Front End. And here's where we stitch together the various services. First off, with external HTTP endpoints, this is configuring ingress so that from outside the application system, when you request to interact with it, it's going to punch a hole in a firewall and allow requests to come to the web front end. The cache and the API service do not have this, so they are not exposed outside the firewall. Okay? Next 2 lines, with reference, this is where it's making that connection and saying the web front end knows about the Redis cache and knows about the API service. Looks like, just like adding stuff to the DI container says acid necro. Yes. Let's talk about that and actually get into the web application. So this is a Blazor application, but you can do all these same things in other ASP.NET applications, worker services, and more. So I'm doing my typical web application create builder, and here's where it starts adding the Aspire components. Add service defaults. We'll see that in a second, but this is setting up a set of default configuration for logging, metrics, and hardening your HTTP client so it's resilient in making connections between various services. But here, this is a new client package that's available to you to use Redis for output cache. Add Redis output cache. And notice we refer to the keyword cache here. That's the same name as was defined over here. So now I don't need to pass around, right, localhost, Fritz's machine, and a port number. No. That service location is being passed around for you between the various components of your application system. So I'm able to reference and place it there and load up and say, add Redis output cache. I could pass in a full location of where that is in a connection string, but Aspire makes that available for you. Continuing, down here, it sets up the HTTP client. This is code that you would have to write, but it adds the HTTP client connecting a weather API client that's over here that receives an HTTP client so we can connect in query an API, right? An HTTP API. And in here, it says, well, go get that data from API service. Once again, we're taking advantage of the service discovery, and API service is named here in my Aspire app host project. I'm giving the resources inside my project a name, and you would do this in Kubernetes with some domain name capabilities, but I don't even have to think about the entire connection string. I give my resource a name, it generates that connection string with these with reference entries, and consequently, in this case, it's just an endpoint to that service, and I'm specifying go connect to it. Now, this was just recently introduced. HTTPS and HTTP indicates use HTTPS preferredly. If it's not available, use HTTP. So service discovery takes care of a little bit of that for us. Okay. And the rest of this code is the same as you're used to seeing when building an ASP.NET application. Okay. This is interesting. It is really handy, right, Don Stefan? Is Azure Key Vault the only secret store in Aspire today, or are there some others in the pipeline? There are some others. Key Vault's the one it will deploy by default. Let me catch up on some of these other. Nick on YouTube says, is it required to have all the projects inside a single solution? If I have multiple projects, do I need to add it into a single solution? No, you do not need to add it into a single solution. Let me make sure. You can say add project, and you can specify the name of the project and the project path to load it from. That's great for .NET. We saw previously Mario had an Unreal Engine that Mario launched. You want to run that? Cool. Add executable and specify the name, command, and working directory of where that is, and it will launch and manage that. And you can also pass arguments into this. I'm not going to be able to get... it's the last argument over here. It'll pass arguments into that executable, right? So that you can receive and take in configuration about where some of these services are. I suspect, Mario, when you ran your Unreal Engine, you passed in locations for some of those databases that you hosted and ran inside the application. So that's the intro nickel tour of some of these things. We didn't talk about the service defaults yet. And we didn't get too far into the dashboard beyond just seeing it. Let's look at the dashboard again, and it'll help show how some of these things light up and we can work with the service defaults. How you doing there, Hakora on YouTube? Hello. What is the suggestion of Redis in regard to their change of licensing? If Redis, the Redis Labs team and Redis project are fully supported and sponsored by Microsoft. You can use Redis as much as you want. No penalty, no change of APIs on Microsoft Azure. If you are working with Redis in your local data center, if you're working with Redis as a single developer, as a hobbyist, you are not affected by their licensing changes. The only people affected by their licensing changes are large companies that are reselling access to Redis capabilities. So, and if you are a large company that is doing that, they are requiring you by licensing terms to set up a license, an agreement with them so that you can resell it. As of right now, May 8th, 2024, Microsoft is the only one of the public cloud providers that has signed that agreement. You can read into that as you will. Why do you need to use Visual Studio Preview if you want to use .NET Aspire? Because ComputerWiz, because .NET Aspire is still in preview as of today, May 8th, 2024, the time of this recording. When it is released as a RTM version, It will be included and on the release version of Visual Studio. So I had clicked in and was navigating around here and showing you the weather and how it caches this, right? And that's nice. But there's logs that are generated for this. Not just these logs that you see on the console. That's right. Your ASP.NET console is over here. And you're able to see all the exact same messages that you would see at the command line. I don't have a bunch of command lines running around. I have just this one that is running the app host. Okay. All the command lines to run those various services are sitting here inside the dashboard, and you can watch them and interact with them. All right. So now we're getting into some interesting things, but let's talk about these other entries over here. There's structured logging too. So I can actually walk through and see the complete details of a request, right? All of the request information that flowed through the system. And I can hit the trace, and let's just go through to the trace, and see exactly what was hit and processed. So web front end had a request for weather. It had a bunch of 5 things that processed through web front end and 1 that processed through API service, and it came back in 31 milliseconds. I can view the details, and I get a complete flow diagram of exactly what happened on which system. Tried to get it from the cache. Then it decided, no, I'm going to go get it from the web front end. The web front end said, no, I'm going to go get it from the API service. There's the request to the API service, and there it is, putting it into cache. Okay? I can view and click it and look at the details of just that part. I can even get into... okay, I don't have a log on it. So I've got all kinds of ways to dive in and look at exactly what's going on in here for that single request. For me as a developer, when I've got a set of microservices that I'm interacting with, and some stuff might be coming out of cache, some stuff might not, and I don't know. To be able to see, oh, I got it from cache. It was set in cache. It tried to get it from cache, right? Makes it clearer to me exactly what process occurred, instead of writing a whole bunch of extra junk into my logs and having to spelunk through them and try and figure out how they all fit together. Yeah, there's also updates to the debugger too. Couldn't you do this in non-preview VS by installing the .NET workloads? Yeah, there's other things with the debugger, with hot reload, that are in the mix, and I understand there's even more updates for hot reload to make it an even better experience coming soon. So, and yeah, there's other components that make up Aspire that are used and managed differently by Visual Studio. To what Azure component is the Aspire dashboard deployed on Azure? It's not. This is a developer tool. When you get into Azure, that's at a point, or AWS or in Kubernetes, that's at a point where you probably want to use some of those dashboards and tools and things that are out in those locations. So if you want to see the metrics, as a developer, you don't have to spin up another tool to see things like, where are my current requests coming in? How long are the server durations of those requests, right? And it updates and is a live ticking graph here inside the dashboard. It's built. It comes with you for free. But you probably don't want these developer-centric tools when your operations folks are looking at production. You probably don't. So this is where service defaults comes in, and you start thinking about and looking at some of those options. The statistics that you're seeing are being configured and delivered with OpenTelemetry. There's health checks in here that help to indicate on the dashboard whether stuff's running properly or not. So we've got health checks in there that help to report, hey, it's running properly, or it's still starting up. The service discovery is what makes those connections that we saw between the app host and those named services and our, in this case, the web project. We'll play with this a little bit more in a second. And also here, configure the HTTP client defaults so we get some resiliency and so that it knows how to do the service discovery. Continuing here, OpenTelemetry configuration, adding OpenTelemetry, configuring some initial metrics for ASP.NET Core for instrumenting our HTTP clients and the .NET runtime. You can add more to this. You can create and instrument your own business-specific metrics. We're going to talk about that later in this series. You can do gRPC client instrumentation if you need gRPC clients, but HTTP client is here with tracing, and add the OpenTelemetry exporters. This is where you can start to pivot and push things into other interesting places for your operations teams. Add OpenTelemetry and send it to Prometheus. There's a lot of folks that use Prometheus. It's a great tool to give you a place to put your metrics, your logs, so you can parse and read through that with a bunch of other tools. We've got folks that do this and then spin up Grafana. So there's Grafana dashboards that are built and available for you for ASP.NET Core that you can download and configure in your Grafana instance. Set this up so it's exporting data to Prometheus, and you can start up Grafana and start mining through that data in that production space that your operations folks are used to. Or you can set up Azure Monitor Explorer if you'd like as well, and export things automatically to Application Insights and be able to work with Azure Monitor. The options are here. There isn't anything here saying, sorry, you're not allowed to use that Google service. You want to use some other service? Go for it. Here's the APIs. Here's how it works. It's OpenTelemetry. Export it wherever you'd like. It's your data. It's your system. How you run it is up to you. These are a couple places that we know customers want to be able to use. So we're going to give you some samples out of the box. Yes, I like how David words this. The dashboard doesn't replace these tools, but it gives you that visibility as a developer without having to spin up the big, massive, cloud-grade tools. Okay? You don't need to do all of that because you have it as a developer in a little developer experience that makes us as developers happy. Can we define in Aspire the auto-scaling of services? That's part of delivery. I think that's something that you could do as part of deployment. Part of the configuration, I don't remember. And quite frankly, I haven't hit a scale where I need to yet. So, okay. So, and there's a default health checks, map default endpoints for health and whether applications are alive. So, and you can customize this however you need to for your health checks for your systems. Maybe there's other things you want to be able to check and inspect so you can report degraded status. You can do that. But there's other things in here that I want to show you that we can add in and quickly get additional features and capabilities without thinking. Like, over here, right? So here we are in app host and we defined cache. Well, maybe I want to be able to explore my cache and inspect what's going on inside Redis. Wouldn't it be really great if we could just say, where is it? Not add. With Redis Commander. I can do that, right? Restart the application, and I'll have Redis Commander automatically wired up to my cache. So, since this is a developer tool, as a PM, will you have any issues if your developers use their tool on their own? It's all, everything in Aspire, and this is where the endpoint is, everything in Aspire ends on the developer workstation. How you deploy is another tool. How you publish is another tool. That'll be, for Azure, a tool called AZD that we've built. The AWS folks, the Kubernetes folks have other tools that you can look up and learn how to use. I'm going to focus on AZD because I'm on the official Microsoft channels here. There's Cache Commander. So let's start up the application here. Just go over to the weather, and that just dropped an entry in cache. So I can open up Cache Commander, and we can refresh. Oh, come on. No. We're going to have to hit it a couple more times and make sure it reloads. You make me sad. Nope, it's not going to show me. Show me my keys, man. Show me my keys. Where is it? Where is it? No, I don't want to look at the various commands. I'm not very good with this tool. What can I tell you? Oh, dear Lord. Go away. You're not going to let me close this either. That's so handy. Yeah, I know. No, it's not going to show me. And now I've run out. Like, I can see that there's more keys here. And it's not expanding and showing me the other keys. Yeah, one key. Look, there it is, but I can't actually get to it. No matter. I want to get into Postgres and show you Postgres. So even if I'm using Aspire, I can still deploy manually. Yes. Aspire augments the way you deploy. You can build with Aspire locally and deploy however you want. Continue with your GitHub actions. Does it run the cache commander as an image? Sure does. It's right there. Redis commander latest. Yep. And if you want to see exactly how it's configured, there's the logs. So you can browse through and look at those. But the big thing that we're going to do next week, oh gosh, I'm giving away the ghost here by talking about what I'm going to do next week in the final 10 minutes. I can add a Postgres database. I can add a MySQL database, right? Like builder, add, well, I can't add it right away. I need to actually add packages that define exactly what services I want. So let me head back up here and I can say, give me Aspire hosting Postgres. Right? There's the configuration stuff to get it running on Azure. I'm going to just run it here locally. Yep, give me that. Yeah, I know, because I didn't finish the command there. But now I can do add Postgres. And let's just call this my database server. But I don't really configure a database server, right? I configure individual databases. You're man, Copilot, you're giving away the cool stuff here. So, like the actual database, right? Inside that, yeah, add database. Sure, I'll call it my database. Sure, that works. But up here, I can say pgdb with pgadmin, and it'll give me the capabilities to explore and see exactly what's going in my Postgres database. And down here, I can say with reference the database, and it'll make that database connection available to my application. I just added, 4 lines of code, and it's going to spin up and run a Postgres database for me in a container and a second container with pgadmin so that I can explore what's going on in the database that was established by the first container and make that Postgres database available to my web application. So there's my Postgres database right there. Okay. And I can see that it's started up and it's out here. Okay. There's all the logs for that. But I can also see pgadmin, and I can see that it's starting up. Now, there's a question here in chat. Why create a database as a container? Because you don't want to install that database locally. You don't want to put Postgres down on your machine. SQL Server runs in a container. MySQL runs in a container. Redis runs in a container. You don't want to install and manage that with all your other Windows stuff. So by running in a container, you can actually tell it persist the database content locally, so that from one development session to the next, it saves the state of your application. But now I can go into pgadmin, and I can see my database server out here. My database server. And I look into the list of databases. I see what you've done here. This has changed. And I can look in, right, there's the Postgres database that it created. I don't see, it didn't allocate the other database, my databases. But there's the public schema. Yeah, it didn't allocate the other database. I didn't create it yet, so it probably didn't create it. So this is intended for local development. However, when you publish out to a production space, you can mount data volumes in the cloud or in your Kubernetes cluster. You can mount data volumes that are persisted to disk somewhere. But being able to move and have multiple database engines might be beneficial to you. Yes, you can use add container as well. Yes. So if I go back over here, right, besides just saying add Postgres, right, there is add container, and you can specify a container name and image that you want. Sure, no. Right, there's a image. What's the image registry? I've got about 5 minutes to wrap up. I forget the name of the image registry. Docker image registry image, which sounds stupid to say. Is it just registry? Yeah. Cool. So let's start a registry. And I'll just call this registry, just so that I can say, yep, there it is. There's registry. Right? So I'm just adding a container with an image registry. It's out on Docker. I don't have it locally, so it's going to pull, install, and run that container for me. There it is, starting, and wow, okay, it loaded a lot faster than I thought. But I didn't expose any endpoints, and I can see there it is running. So you can add any container, whether it's on Docker registry, you can point to other registries. You can add and download and run them as part of your development experience here. Right? Like builder, add container, Raven, and I'll get RavenDB. I think that's with Raven Studio. I don't think that's a thing, but go get RavenDB. And, oh, darn it. I got the wrong name. Give me the right name for that. RavenDB/RavenDB. Of course it is. Of course it is. Restart. Can you run Aspire on Windows with the Docker it needs running on Ubuntu over the network? It's preferred that you run it locally. You can run Podman with it locally as well. So, but I'm not quite sure how you would configure that to run remotely. There it is. There's the RavenDB container starting. I didn't expose any ports. You would want to expose ports, and then the endpoints would light up, right? Just like in a Docker Compose file, right? You would specify ports that you want to use with arguments, and you would specify, I believe it's in with argument. Oh, there it is, with endpoint. And you would specify the name of the endpoint and exactly how it gets configured. So all of that is available for you with Aspire. This has been just an introduction of what Aspire is. We've gone around and we've tinkered and we've shown some of these things. Oh, I promised to show MVC in here also. Hang on. Get rid of that. I promised to show MVC as part of this. Somebody was asking about, hey, can I use MVC with that? Absolutely. I nearly forgot about using MVC. That's Razor Pages. Give me the MVC template. No. MVC. Model View Controller. This one. Sure, call it Web Application 1. That's fine. Yep, enable container support. That's fine by me. And look at this. Enlist in Aspire orchestration. All that's doing is it's going to drop entries in here. In the app host and some entries in the program file. That you saw it update there. But there it is. Add Web Application 1. And inside Web Application 1, inside the programs, add service defaults. So now when I start this, we'll have an MVC application running inside .NET Aspire next to our Blazor application, next to our little web surface. All of this is free. You can configure it however you want. There's the Blazor application. There's the MVC application. I'll click into localhost 7057. There's the MVC application. There's the Blazor application. And they're running just fine next to each other in the same system. This might be valuable to you if you have an admin application, if you have a client-facing application, and you want to configure them and build them separately here, but maybe the admin application only responds to requests over your VPN and you distribute that locally. Maybe. And the client application gets delivered out to the outward-facing internet. Sure. These are options that are available to you. The topology, the architecture of this is what you're free to configure. And because we have C# tools available to help us do that, you have all kinds of options available to you to build and structure things however you can dream up. And that's pretty phenomenal. That's an awesome, awesome thing that you have access to that you can do. Enlist in Aspire app. Yep. And you saw it was just two lines, and there's a couple project references that are added. If you don't have Visual Studio running, it's easy to do at the command line. I'll show you next time how you can do that. It should just work, Don Stefan. Yep, that's the way it should work. Let me wrap up here. The last couple questions. Anas on YouTube says, if we needed to reference a non.NET service or app like a Python backend, I assume we have to add it to a container first before we can bring it into Aspire. And Mario, yes, highlights here, executables do work. If you take a look a little bit earlier in the video, go back about an hour. Our friend Mario here shows how they have an executable out there that ran an Unreal Engine server. And he brought the Unreal Engine in and was able to orchestrate and use that with a series of MySQL databases as well as web services that he stood up. Really cool stuff. And I think I retweeted or I commented on it. There's take a look at my interactions on Twitter and you'll see the screenshot of that. Really, really great stuff. I'm very excited about .NET Aspire. As a Blazor developer, this is allowing me to do things with other microservices, other API services, other components inside my distributed system in an easy, efficient way with great logging, telemetry, and the discoverability. I don't have to spend a half an hour getting things stitched together. I hope you join me next week. We're going to introduce the Big Dumb blog concept, and we're going to go into our first couple of lessons where we're going to take a very simple blog application, The application has no business logic. We're not going to get lost in what the application is and how it works. And we're going to add it to a database. And we're going to start to slowly add features and light up Aspire capabilities as we build out and over-engineer a blog that eventually will be something that even the press would want to use because it's got so many features. All right? I'm going to work on that Southern accent. Absolutely, Big Daddy McCoy. Have a fantastic rest of your day. If you're watching us on YouTube, there's lots of great videos over here on the side and just below. Make sure you check them out. The Blazor series we just finished is here on the .NET channel in a playlist called Learn C# with CSharpFritz. If you're watching the recording, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you tune in on Wednesdays, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, 1300 UTC. We're streaming live, and you can get your questions answered, and you can participate. I want to see you chatting here. Join us next time. And of course, if you're watching us on Twitch on the Visual Studio channel, let's get ready for a raid. Let's go find somebody else who's writing code, doing something fun and tech on Twitch, doing something cool that we can support and we can join and encourage. He was here a little bit earlier. And he's hosting a little bit of co-working, and I know I rate him a bit. Let's go check out and join our friend. He's a Microsoft MVP. He is the bald-bearded builder. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching on Twitch, you don't have to do a thing, and you will join us over on the Bald Bearded Builders channel. If you're watching on YouTube, Bald Bearded Builder. There's the link if you want to join us. Click through and follow along. Thank you so much. I'll be back streaming tomorrow over on my channel, twitch.tv CSharpFritz, youtube.com CSharpFritz. We're going to finish deploying a microservice that does thumbnails for Aspirify.net, and we're going to start working on setting up invite codes so that you can build invites to invite other folks to participate and log in securely to a website, all built with Blazor and .NET Aspire. Have a fantastic rest of your day wherever you might be. I wish you good health and good coding. Take care.
Really, it just makes it harder for me to breathe. So, that didn't work. Visual Studio. Visual Studio. How dare you? You know full well that I'm a Visual Studio Code man, and you dare show your face in here with your immediate window and your better debugging for .NET code? How dare you?
Oh my.
Hi kid, welcome in. Good to have you. I use Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. I do like Visual Studio Code though. I'm kind of a stand for it. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh my.
I'm trying to think. It's like you knew we were coming. It's almost like someone spoiled it. We're here to teach you Aspire. You know what? I have not played with Aspire yet. And, okay, you want full transparency from me about Aspire?